Velith Kaur was bred in the shadows. A Nithari assassin of unmatched skill, she belonged to a feared syndicate that thrived on secrecy and ruthlessness. Her training erased hesitation, suppressed empathy, and fine-tuned her every instinct toward one goal: the flawless elimination of high-value targets. So when the order came to eliminate a human scientist named Dr. Elias Monroe, Velith didn't question it. She prepared. The mission briefing painted Elias as dangerous. According to the syndicate's client, Monroe had developed a planetary-scale nanobot system disguised as a restoration effort. But the true purpose, they claimed, was malicious, a biological override that could sterilize alien ecosystems and render entire species infertile. In a galaxy still reeling from interspecies tensions, such a weapon could tip the balance of power irrevocably. Caldrex, a dying world with scarlet skies and rust-colored sands, was where Elias had set up his remote research station. It was once a lush planet, devastated by unchecked strip mining from a dozen corporate interests. Now it was a wasteland, a place most had given up on, the perfect hiding spot for a scientist building a secret weapon. Or so the syndicate said. Velith's approach was swift and silent. She slipped past satellite detection, hacked the station's perimeter drones, and monitored Elias for days before making her move. What she found confounded her expectations. Elias wasn't guarded, militarized, or surrounded by covert tech. He was alone, working long hours in a greenhouse lab, nurturing alien plant strains back to life. The facility was filled with regenerative samples, soil enrichment data, and terraforming records. Nothing like a weapons lab. She watched him speak softly to the seedlings as he tended them, laughing at his own jokes and talking to an old hollow image of his deceased wife. He seemed harmless, but appearances were often the deadliest mask, so Velith remained vigilant. Then, fate intervened. One night, a razor-beaked predator native to Caldrex, called a shrike beast, ambushed Velith while she was repositioning. Despite her combat skills, the creature sank its claws deep into her leg before she killed it. Bleeding and concussed, she collapsed outside Elias's station perimeter. He found her unconscious in the morning and, without hesitation, brought her inside. Using his medical bots and field medicine, Elias treated her wounds, never once suspecting the assassin he had unknowingly saved. When she awoke, groggy and disoriented, Elias greeted her with concern, assuming she was a lost traveler or researcher injured by the terrain. Velith didn't understand his kindness. She lied to him, saying her transport had crashed while surveying the region. He believed her without a hint of suspicion. Over the next several days, as she recovered under his care, Velith was forced to observe the man she had been sent to, kill, not as a target but as a person. And everything about him contradicted the mission file. She watched him cry over failed samples, smile when a rare blossom bloomed, and risk his own life to fix a broken atmospheric regulator that threatened his crops. Elias Monroe wasn't building a weapon. He was trying to heal a world everyone else had abandoned. For the first time in her life, Velith hesitated, and in that hesitation, her old loyalty began to crack. Velith Kaur remained within Elias Monroe's facility longer than she ever should have. By now, her wounds had healed. Her exit was open, her mission incomplete but not impossible. Yet she stayed. She told herself it was strategic. She needed more intel, more certainty. But the truth gnawed at her. Elias didn't match the profile of a mass-scale bioweapons engineer. Everything about him seemed genuinely devoted to planetary restoration, not annihilation. The data didn't lie, but neither, it seemed, did her instincts, now screaming that something about the contract didn't add up. Under the guise of recovery, Velith began searching for proof. When Elias left the lab for supply runs or rest, she used her assassin protocols to access restricted data caches, review encrypted comms, and scan every system he used. If he had a hidden agenda, she would find it. Instead, she found exactly what she didn't expect: transmissions to environmental boards, unacknowledged grant requests, and lab notes filled with heartbreakingly detailed attempts to restore Caldrex Fee's broken ecosystem. His so-called nanobot system wasn't a weapon. It was a regenerative matrix designed to mimic natural growth processes, rebuilding topsoil, filtering water, and even resurrecting extinct flora via gene weaving. It was a planetary immune system, not a virus. Vayleth realized she'd been played. Someone wanted Elias dead. Not because he posed a threat to innocent lives, but because his work threatened the status quo. If Elias succeeded in making dead worlds livable again, he'd undermine powerful industries, terraforming conglomerates, habitat lease corporations, and syndicate-aligned development syndicates who profited off suffering and dependence. Her mission hadn't been about eliminating danger. It had been about silencing hope, but her inner conflict came to a head sooner than expected. Late one night, she detected movement on the outskirts of the station, stealthy, measured, familiar. Another assassin. The Nithari had sent a failsafe. Second operative, a ghost named Sarek Varn, slipped into the facility, believing Elias to be undefended. Vayleth intercepted him in the greenhouse corridor, their combat silent but brutal. Sarek was fast, almost as skilled as she was, and surprised to see her defending the target. "What are you doing, Vayleth?" he hissed, bleeding from a knife, wound to his side. "He's just a human. Just the mission." "He's innocent," she growled, blade pressed to his throat. "And the mission is a lie." When Sarek refused to stand down, she made a choice. One final strike, one final death, and it wasn't Elias's. After the body was dealt with, she knew she could no longer lie. She revealed everything to Elias: the contract, her identity, the syndicate's manipulation. He stared at her in stunned silence, not with rage or fear, but with quiet betrayal. "I trusted you," he said. "You shouldn't have," she replied. "But I'm still here, not to kill you, to protect you." He didn't fully believe her. Who would? But the sincerity in her voice, the tremor of something close to guilt in her alien eyes, was enough to stop him from turning her away. And so began the shift, from predator and prey to something far more complicated. Vayleth had crossed a line no assassin was meant to approach. She cared. The moment Vayleth killed the second assassin, the clock started ticking. The Nithari Syndicate did not tolerate failure, especially not betrayal. And now, both she and Elias Monroe were on the run. One a marked traitor, the other a target whose death was still very much in demand. Their first move was to abandon the research station. Vayleth wiped the systems, destroyed the physical files, and packed what samples Elias could carry. The rest they left behind, watching the smoldering ruins from a ridge as stealth drones zipped overhead, late but searching. From that moment forward, their survival depended on each other. Initially, the tension was palpable. Elias still harbored doubts. Vayleth had been his would-be killer, and despite her confession, trust didn't come easily. She, in turn, struggled with guilt and unfamiliar emotions. It was one thing to spare a target, another entirely to feel protective, responsible for someone she had nearly murdered. But necessity forged an unlikely alliance. They fled across Kaldrexfor's wastelands, avoiding satellites and syndicate trackers, making contact with one of Elias's few trusted allies, a smuggler named Tana Jex. Tana owed Elias her life from an old relief mission, and though she wasn't thrilled to be harboring a Nithari, she agreed to fly them to the neutral trade world of Dareth Station, a place where secrets could hide and identities could be blurred. In the cramped space of Tana's freighter, Elias and Vayleth began to understand each other. He watched her recalibrate pulse rifles and reroute surveillance arrays with eerie precision. She watched him coax plant life from broken soil samples and configure nanobots to heal damaged tissue. He asked questions about her past. She deflected them at first, but slowly she opened up. How she was recruited as a child, raised without family, given only purpose. Her past was one of discipline and blood, not laughter or love. Elias, in turn, shared stories of Earth, of music, of oceans, of losing his wife to a disease that the syndicate refused to cure because it wasn't profitable. One night, as they camped on a remote moon during a fuel stop, a trio of bounty hunters ambushed them. Vayleth reacted instantly, shielding Elias with her body, cutting through the attackers with brutal efficiency. When Elias asked afterward why she didn't run and save herself, her answer was quiet and raw. "Because you're the first thing I've ever chosen to protect." After reaching Dareth Station, Elias managed to hack into a central comm node with Valeth's help and retrieve the original bounty data. What they found confirmed their worst fears. The order to kill Elias had come not just from the Syndicate, but from a coalition of corporate and political elites in the Galactic Confederation. His cure would have dismantled too many systems of control. Knowing this, they made a choice. They wouldn't just run anymore. They would fight back. Elias began preparing to leak the data and reveal the truth galaxy-wide, while Valeth drew up defensive protocols and countermeasures for the inevitable retaliation. They were fugitives, yes, but now they were something more. A team. A scientist who had tried to save worlds and an assassin who had finally found a reason worth killing for instead of against. Together, they were no longer just surviving. They were preparing to strike back. Everything had led to this. Elias and Valeth had crossed a line that could not be uncrossed. The moment they exposed the Syndicate's manipulation and the Confederation's complicity, the galaxy's power brokers declared them enemies of the state. Their leaked evidence spread across the net, and while some voices rallied in support, the dominant reaction from the elite was swift and brutal, silenced them permanently. Dareth Station was no longer safe. Syndicate agents and hired mercenaries flooded the underlevels, hunting for them with kill orders in hand. But Elias had already uploaded most of the data to decentralized networks. The last piece, the full release of his nanobot restoration system, needed a secure satellite uplink and a massive distribution relay to be effective. Their only shot? Station Argonis, an orbital relay hub previously used by Planetary Relief, agencies now decommissioned and forgotten by the Confederation. Valeth and Tana Jex worked together to forge clearances and reroute patrol paths, while Elias prepared the activation protocols. They arrived at Argonis under fire. A Syndicate battlecruiser intercepted them as they docked, launching boarding teams while jamming the uplink. Valeth sprang into action, donning full combat gear for the first time since abandoning the Nithari. No longer an assassin in the shadows, she became a soldier of defiance. The corridors of the station turned into a war zone. Valeth fought with lethal precision, deflecting stun drones, disabling heavy mercs, and drawing fire away from Elias as he worked feverishly to restore power to the core uplink. Tana provided overwatch, sniping enemies through the maintenance levels with near-surgical accuracy. But the Syndicate had sent its best. Leading the charge was Commander Ra'al Tovek, Valeth's former mentor, an enforcer who had once trained her in the art of silent killing and psychological warfare. He offered her a final out. Surrender, Elias, and live. She answered with a blade through his chest. As Valeth battled her way through collapsing bulkheads, Elias finally broke through the interference. With moments to spare, he initiated the full-scale broadcast, deploying the nanobot cure to autonomous seeders on dozens of fringe worlds and dumping the Confederation's incriminating communications into every major media net. But victory came, at a cost. In the last moments of the Syndicate assault, Valeth was caught in an explosion while shielding Elias from a plasma blast. Gravely wounded and half-conscious, she collapsed beside the uplink core, smoke and sparks swirling around her. Elias dragged her to safety, refusing to let her die after all they'd fought for. The aftermath was seismic. The Confederation's leadership scrambled to contain the scandal. Protests erupted across neutral planets. Relief organizations mobilized to support the restoration projects Elias had begun. Syndicate influence took a severe blow, forced to retreat into deeper shadows. Elias was granted full clemency and hailed as a planetary hero, but he refused to go alone. With legal protections in place and public eyes watching, he secured amnesty for Valeth, no longer a ghost in the system, but a living symbol of redemption. She stayed by his side, no longer an assassin, not quite, a soldier. Just a woman who had chosen something different. Together they traveled from world to world, overseeing the healing process she had once been ordered to destroy. and Valeth made a vow she kept without question. No one would ever harm Elias Monroe again.